Paul, tell me what you're working on. What are you working on? What's your company called? Like, what are you guys doing?
Pitchit is the name.
Okay.
And so we're based out of Austin, Texas.
Okay.
And we plug into sales teams that do really heavy lead generation. So they have a lot of inbound leads. They need help figuring out how to get a hold of them, how to engage them all. And they're struggling with the volume. And so they need either 24/7 round the clock, huge amount of people in a call center
Okay.
dialing nonstop,
Okay.
or they are interested in AI helping them with this. And so a lot of the companies we work with, this solution for the last 15 years was we're getting 2,000 leads a day.
Okay.
Let's go to the Philippines. Let's hire 20 people, and then they'll dial all 2,000 of those. Each of these people will get 100 leads a day. It's their job to call them 6 times. And if they don't answer, leave a voicemail 6 times. And then at the end of the day, we've kind of scorched the earth and dialed the heck out of these people, and we'll just leave them alone after that, right? And so, as crazy as that sounds, that is legitimately how almost all of the lead generation models selling to consumers work today. And so I believe AI is a much better solution here. And we plug in right when the lead is generated to make sure that we can start a conversation with that person, to make sure they're a real person. And then we score the conversation as it's going through, and we'll answer pricing questions, common objections on why they should buy your product or not. We'll ask times to book a meeting, and we'll actually book that meeting, and then we'll capture whatever additional personally identifiable information you need from them. So your form fill might only get like first name, last name, email, phone number, but we
Okay.
can fill in like address, zip code, what pricing plan they want, what day and time they want to meet. We can really get a lot more information out of them in that conversation. And if they don't answer, right, they get marked as cold, and your sales team knows not to call them 6 times because they're not answering our AI agents when we're trying to contact them, right? And so it is an attempt to automate the very first 24 hours worth of manual labor, grunt work that all of these teams are doing with humans right now. We're trying to replace the need for humans at that moment in time. And so when the AI has effectively identified someone as a warm or hot lead, we then hand it off to the human in the loop, the real person, to close the deal, so that they're only spending time on the people who are actually in a conversation with them. And
So you mentioned you made a pivot though. So how did you guys come to the conclusion that this is what the market needs? And what did you build before this? And tell me a little bit how you decided to make that pivot, maybe.
well, originally the idea of Pitch It came from consulting work that I was doing, and a lot of people prefer the biggest need in the market for B2B is that they need more leads. And it's because there's very little differentiation between most B2B services, products, and softwares. There's very little differentiation. And so they struggle to get leads because they're just like everybody else. And so they spam people, right? They email them, they LinkedIn outreach, they text them, they cold call them. And generally speaking, those are really high volume, really low success rate activities, as you guys all probably know, working in B2B. And you'll spend 10, 20K a month, trying all these things. And so the concept behind Pitch It was people were paying me as a consultant at the time, like 3 years ago, to set up these really sophisticated multi-channel cold outreach systems that were better than them doing it themselves, right? Signing up for an email, trying in email sending platform, trying to do it on their own, exporting the file, putting it into HubSpot, trying to create these workflows when they've never done it before, right? And so it was a consulting gig, and it did work. I mean, we would get really good results for people compared to what they could do on their own, but there was no real software that could take a recipient and message them across 7 channels. And so we started developing it. This was like 2 years ago before we went public and live. And while we were developing it, we realized that really the reason that none of these platforms really exist is because you just get shut down when you when you try to go multi-channels. You can legally do email. There's really no restrictions. There's a ton of restrictions on text. There's a ton of restrictions on robo dialing you get in huge lawsuits, and there's a lot of like do not call registry and know your customer requirements. And then the channels like Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, LinkedIn, they'll just shut down any platform within like a week. So we could never get it actually working long enough that we could even take it to market, because first or second customer using Pitchit would get shut down, and then we'd get shut down as a supplier. And so we were constantly like fixing all the breaks.
Mhm.
And it was very clear that there was no way we were going to be able to do it unless we really wanted to like make a much more simple spray and pray email platform. And I'm fully aware that that place is super saturated, right? So that there was no way we were going to get funding to go and build a competitor to Apollo, who had just raised $100 million, or Lemlist, who's bootstrapped to 10 million, or Clay, which has been around for like 8 years and has a ton of funding and traction, and they've gone viral, right? Those guys are all basically fighting each other for the same like $49 a month high churn users. And we're all just kind of like quitting, moving, and they're all not very good. So we all like, as consumers of those products, just churn out constantly. And so it's a really tough market. Margins are super low. Churn is insanely high. CAC is really high. I just didn't want to make the product more simple. Our main differentiator was the multi-channel, and it turns out that it just wasn't compliant or legal. So we would have, it certainly would have been well differentiated, and it would have been amazing, but never would have survived long enough to provide the service. So too much downtime, ultimately. And so we pivoted and we said, all right, what do we have here? We've got really cool multi-channel pipes, but we can only use it for opted-in users, right? So is there a market for using this in a compliant way? And there is, turns out. So we had this customer who's the largest dealer of T-Mobile kind of fall in our lap, tell us that they needed help. They got 2,000 leads a day at their peak, and 1,000 leads a day on like weekends, and which is like their trough slow times, right? And they're all opted in. They're all like passing KYC and do not call filters. So they're like, green light, go. Message them multi-channel. You're not going to have any problems with compliance, or you'll have minimal ones like the usual, right? Like if you send a ton of emails, eventually you'll get marked as spam, but you're not actually spamming people, right? So the spam rate's low enough that an email could survive like 90 days without needing to be flipped. And so that's kind of when we found our target. And also it was nice because we didn't have to throw away our product, right? We only had to get rid of a couple of channels like LinkedIn and replace them with some others. So it was like a pretty minimal tech debt cleanup job to pivot into that new space. And ultimately, from a product offering and like a needs analysis, we just moved it from like you need demand generation. We just moved down the funnel a little bit to you need lead qualification. So still sales enablement, still working with sales leaders, but now we have some people from marketing, and now we have opted in users instead of cold users. So B2C companies have really shown a lot of interest in this, and then B2B companies have shown significantly less. We plug our software in.
I like it, man. I think we did talk about like a couple of times how it was going to be hard to pull off this multi-channel thing just because they all have different APIs and they all have different restrictions. It's like like every day you're going to be picking which problem to work on and which.
And dude, they started shutting the APIs down. Like X, for example, that got shut down, and that was that killed us. That was we had just finished developing it. We were lit, and then we had all kinds of issues with LinkedIn. That was just a waste of time. So it was just like you build 6 and 2 of them go down, and so now you're down to 4, and it turns out X was never going to come back. LinkedIn's never going to come back. And so it just was so challenging when you're going against the current and these providers don't want you to have access to their API. And I think it like 8 years ago, when the APIs were all open on all these channels, it probably would have been like the time to build Pitchit. And then we would have needed to have like sold it 6 years ago before spam became a rampant issue on all these channels, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, those are I mean, some of these things we're dealing with basically right now. We're trying to figure out like how to scale our email or LinkedIn. And it's like every day when I wake up, I'm like, well, okay, we scale it. How long is it gonna last? They block the profiles, or like
Yeah.
on some of the campaigns we're getting like 0 response rate. So it's like, okay, if you get more inboxes, like what's 0 multiplied by 0? It's still 0.
Still 0. So yeah, these are just not effective channels for communicating anymore. I think ultimately is what they've like overfit their spam prevention so strongly that now it even blocks subscribers from seeing your emails. So you just can't use it for communicating with anyone unless they're on your team. And if they're on your team, you're probably using Slack anyways. So,
Yeah.
email is still important, but I just don't know what it's going to look like. It might not be the main channel anymore. In my opinion, I don't think it's going to be because nobody reads or replies anymore. And if they do, you can't track it. So it's hard to even know if what you're doing is worth it.
So what do you think is the future? Like, I mean, we're kind of betting on content here. I mean, partially why we're doing this interview.
Well, content is going to be king. The
Okay.
medium, I think, is what's changing, right? So where does that content get placed, and how do you communicate with people? I have seen some just shocking numbers with some of our customers that have seen reply rates by people who have opted in, and so you have this like layer of knowing that this is a real person because they've actually, and so you don't have the usual question mark on like, do they even care about this content? Is that why they're not replying? Well, you know that they like it because they opted in. So what we've seen is reply rates are super high on social channels. So comments on your posts and ads, direct messages to your profile are by far the highest volume of leads that any sales team will ever get. And it is the most ignored channel. Very few salespeople even have access to their company's LinkedIn page or Instagram page or even see the comments on their company's ads. And that's because the marketing team has access to all that stuff. And so what I think is going to happen is platforms like ours are going to figure this out, and we're going to give tools to the sales team that help them kind of leapfrog the marketing team and just go straight to the consumer from their company's inbox on Instagram, and they'll just be doing business with people there, getting the meeting booked, and doing work with them on Zoom. And then the leads in HubSpot, and you can start using email at that point in time. That's fine. But I have seen Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp reply rates equivalent to texting reply rates. And man, email's almost 0. Even on opted-in users, it's almost 0. The only thing I have seen as a side effect of heavy email is you could get meetings booked from email. So email does have a pretty similar booking rate if you like put a booking link in an email to texting and Facebook messaging with booking links. That is the same, but the reply rate's almost nothing. And so what I'm starting to see is the consumer behavior is these people are just trying to like inbox 0 as quickly as possible. And so if you're asking them complex stuff that requires like a reply and a threaded conversation, they're just not going to reply to you. But if you ask them to click a link and book a meeting, and that means they can be done with your email, they might do that. And then you're on their books for tomorrow. This email's read. Let's move on to the next one. Let's get this to 0 so I can get to work today. And they're just trying to, you think of it as a chore to get through their email now. With you, that's like fun for them. They'll do that in their free time, and we've seen conversations that go on for like days on social channels with our customers. So it's just it's pretty clear are changing, and it like your content should be delivered through a social medium, and a social to help you have those conversations at scale. I provide those inboxes with some kind of platform.
agree. You know, I just actually did like a little paid interview for like I guess like with an insurance, not a broker, but insurance company.
Mhm.
And so they wanted to understand why I talked to them. And the reason was because um, I met this person on some online community for like networking, and it was outside of LinkedIn. It was outside of email because like as soon as I hear someone trying to sell me insurance or like wealth management services or whatever it is through LinkedIn or email, it's automatic ignore,
No
delete.
matter what, even if you need it, it's just a no.
Yeah, it's just like I just don't want to see any more pitches, you know.
Yeah,
Like, I log into LinkedIn and like whoever like I don't even read any of the messages anymore, you know? And
I
so
don't either.
just
It's gone. Even if I want it, even if I need it. I could need a website and someone would pitch me a website and I would say no just because they sound and look desperate pitching me for a website. It's just a block. Mark as spam, move on.
yeah, it's wild. And so this is a person who reached out to me on some other social media or like, you know, social media, whatever you want to call it. And because of that, I was open to it. And as a matter of fact, I was really happy to talk to this guy afterwards because I'm like, oh, this guy is cool. But if someone were to do the same, tell me a little bit about like the kind of volumes you're doing. I see you guys raised a new round, $2.5 million. Like, how did you raise that? How did you convince these guys to invest in you? What were
The
the numbers like? Yeah.
this was raised over a period of time,
Okay.
and basically each time that I felt like there was some kind of milestone, I would go up the ladder to the next, hierarchy of investor. And so when we had nothing accomplished, no product, no idea of what we were doing, no deck, nothing, the only people I could get money from were basically friends and family, right? And that's fine. That's what that round is for. As soon as I had an idea and a deck, and some like early traction from consulting work that could tell an investor, hey, I could make a software out of this. That's when we got a check from Plug and Play. And then it was a drought for a long time after that to actually get the product to market. And once the product was to market, I could demo it. That's when I went to angel investors and did some angel syndicate rounds in like the Tech Coast Bay Angels, Pasadena Angels. Lots of those groups exist in California. And so I just did a little tour, raised like 150K from those guys. And then I went to work trying to find a customer. We found that dealer of T-Mobile, got a case study from them, and then then you're like post revenue, not really like crushing it on revenue, but you've got some. The product is live. It's an MVP. You know what you're doing. You got a case study, and so really now you just need the money to like make the product more scalable and take it to market. And that's when we felt like we were ready for a venture capital firm. And so that's when we had Silicon Road Ventures and Gray Ventures join us and got really big checks, right? And that's how we did a Series Seed round. It was a priced round, 2.5 million, closed it up. Money's in the bank. It's all done now, but it it wasn't like I could have met Silicon Road Ventures a year ago and had them invest, right? There were specific milestones that had to be accomplished to get them. And I don't think they would have been as impressed if I hadn't said, here's what we did with, 200K from Plug and Play. And here's how far we took that. Here's what we did with 100K from angel investors. Here's how far. So imagine what we could do with 25 times that number in the bank. We could really have a solid business in a year or two. And then also we had to prove the market validated and needed this product. And so the case study of a customer who came in and got $4 million in monthly revenue after plugging Pitchit into their sales process, and that was like 2.5 times the results that they were getting before using Pitchit. That was the evidence that if we actually built this product, people would want it. And so we had to prove all that stuff before we could get like a big dog investor to lead the round. And so up to that point, I just had to be really scrappy and say, what are the raw materials we have to get a little bit closer to building a rocket ship? And yeah, there were multiple times throughout that year where I just wouldn't sell at all because it felt like that rocket ship was so ugly nobody would ever trust us to get on it, right? And so I had to get super scrappy and like cut expenses and bootstrap it with consulting revenue to get to the next milestone. But eventually we kind of figured it out and the rocket ship was put together. It wasn't pretty, but it would get to space if we had enough gas. And so we got some rocket fuel from Silicon Road Ventures and that attracted Gray Ventures around, right? So now, now it's closed and I can look back and say it was wild because it was 130 investor meetings. Martin at Drav, our mutual friend, 2 years ago told me before I got into doing this, he said, your consulting company is highly profitable, but what you're going to find is you're going to need over 100 investor meetings to close a round to start this software company. And I thought he scared the shit out of me when he said that. I was like, this sounds like it's a waste of time. I don't think I could be able to do that. But I emailed him today and I said, dude, it was 130 meetings that I had to take. You were right. Actually, you were a little bit concerned with meetings. But dude, along the way, like Silicon Valley Bank went out, so we lost all our money for 3 weeks. And there was I had a CTO that we were working with that wasn't working out. And so we had to we had to end that partnership with him. And it was just wild, the stuff that happened along the way. There were multiple times when our bank account got to zero. There were multiple times when we were like in significant debt and had to take out a loan. It was just a mess for a while there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been wild times in startups. I mean, we work with many similar things. But yeah, I think there's a bit of a rebound, so we'll see. But tell me a little bit about I'm looking at your message here. You qualified 530,000 leads with your sales agents that were worth $280 million in revenue for your customers. Is that all majority from one customer, or are you multiple customers?
That's a gross number for everybody on our.
Oh yeah,
it's for everybody that's on our platform. I can't remember when I pulled the totals, but I think it was like a month ago when we pulled the totals for that. Well, we'll obviously update that over time, but the reality is that we work with people that have really heavy volume of leads. And one of the metrics I look at as a KPI is how many leads are we qualifying per month. And if that number goes up every month, revenue for our company will go up every month. And so that's actually one of the major KPIs I look at, in addition to on any given monthly report with our boardroom.
Okay. And so for AI agents, are you guys doing voice agents or is it all chatbot style?
Well, we started with text and we are now moving on to voice. Okay. And that's probably, at least for the time being, where it will end. Those two mediums are by far the most important. And all of our customers the reason that we started with text is because they right now don't have time to do any of the text, but they do have time to do the dials. And so if we create a voice agent, well, they're already doing that. So your biggest value add was cutting operational expenses, but those people are already fully time employed. And so they're going to make the dials anyways. But they weren't doing a lot of text-based email, texting. Nobody was checking Facebook, Instagram, DMs, or comments on ads. And so the real initial value add was add text because they don't have a solution for that, right? And the other reason is that voice agents need to be trained on text. And so if you don't have the text agent built, then the voice agent will not be very good, right? It won't know how to read and understand because it's going to translate just like a human would. Anything it hears into a text, and then it's going to read that text off. And if you don't have that text agent of like all the most common received questions and delivered answers, and you don't have all those decision trees trained, then what you're dealing with is just like the raw out of the box LLM, and it's not trained enough to be very accurate. And so you do need to really train the model on industry specific content and put rails in place so that the voice agent feels like it's not just like really good as like a Jeopardy contestant where it can answer any question about trivia in the world. It's the smartest thing alive. it needs to also start to feel like there's some rails where it's actually a sales agent. So like if you were to call into Walmart and start asking them who is the third president of the United States, they would never answer that question. They would say like, do you have questions about Walmart products? But like if you have a voice agent and you haven't trained them, they'll answer that question. They'll just start talking about George Washington and Civil War and all these facts, and it'll just be those, and the text agent really nailed. That's why we started with text and we're moving on to voice. But eventually we'll have voice and text integrated and interwoven, and so sequences will include both.
One of the engineers that used to work with us built like an AI interviewer, and so it's a voice.
That's cool.
Cool. It mostly seems to work, but I think there's some hesitation with people wanting to talk to like a voice AI agent for now. For now, we'll see where it goes.
I mean, our thought is that everything we're doing is human in the loop. So
Okay.
even the text agent, right? You won't really know you're talking to a text-based agent because
Okay.
you can't hear them, right? And it's just really well written English or Spanish, or it's multilingual, right? But when you're talking to them, you think it's a person, and then they'll book a meeting and the human's in the loop. So the human takes over. The voice agent won't be like attending calls and closing deals, and you just can't. Most of the industries that we work with have regulations, and you need like a recorded call with a certified professional, and like the quote needs to be audited and underwritten. And so you got to capture like credit scores and credit card information, and that's just a lot of stuff that you don't want AI handling and can't legally have handling in many of the spaces we work in. So I don't think it's going to be like an end-to-end AI experience, but there will be pockets where you engage AI and then you hand it back to the human when the recipient is like engaged.
Makes sense. Can you tell me how like this solution gets deployed? Like maybe I'm a T-Mobile reseller or whatnot, and I have a similar problem. How does it get deployed? How does it work
Yeah.
into the company basically?
Well, we've got an iPass customers of ours sync their CRM or their form fill or their Excel or Google Sheet file or their advertising channels. So there's like 7,000 channels that they could pick from as the trigger. And that trigger is what tells Pitchit when to like pull the lead out of their operations and
Okay.
have a conversation and engage that lead. And then we also have an integration to export it back. So for example, they would spin up a Pitchit account and they would sync through our API their Outlook calendar, their Outlook email, or their Gmail calendar, or their Google calendar, or in their Gmail account, right? Then they would sync all the channels that we offer for communicating on top of email, which is text, WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram. So they'd sync those all. They'd log in through API. That's all just like either OAuth 2 or API credentials. That allows us to communicate across 5 or 6 channels with any recipient that we get. And then they would build the integration with the iPass provider, which is tell us where to pull the lead out of your CRM and tell us where to put it after we've had the conversation with someone. And so they basically sync everything and they tell us where in their sequences and workflows they want to plug an AI agent in, and then where in their sequences and workflows they want the results of that conversation.
So, how's the workflow? So you like send them a link and then start chatting with like on your website through like a chatbot, or like how?
Yeah, the way that in terms of HubSpot, let's use HubSpot as an example, right? I think that's one that a lot of people who use is HubSpot or Salesforce. One potential way that they can ads on Facebook, and any comment or direct message from that Facebook page would be integrated into Pitchit. And so we could engage them with text-based conversations there. But that ad's also going to drive a bunch of web traffic to a form fill. And HubSpot is going to capture that form fill and put it in the CRM. And so that could also be a trigger where anytime in a HubSpot workflow that a form fill occurs, you obviously have all these other things that happen, like it changes the life cycle stage, creates a deal, puts it into your pipeline, assigns a rep. Those are all automated in the HubSpot workflow, but they don't have anything that says, okay, we'll now start a conversation with this lead and confirm that they're really interested and ask them what time of day they'd be willing to book. there's nothing like that available in HubSpot. And so what you would do at the end of that workflow is you would have a step that instructs HubSpot to send that data to Pitchit. Pitchit would have that conversation. It would say, looks like you just filled out the form. What time of day can we chat? Are there any questions you have before our meeting, right? Etc. You'd get them talking. We'd extract all of their Q&A and answer it all. We'd pick the time of day. We'd book the meeting on behalf of that sales rep. And so now we've done all that legwork, and then Pitchit would send that data back to HubSpot, and it would show the whole conversation in their timeline with that recipient. Plus, it would show the booked meeting, and the sales rep would have been assigned to that calendar invite as well. So for a HubSpot user, you'd integrate Pitchit.
Got it. So how did you get to like your first like 5 to, I don't know, but like first or
Just it's you know what, we've tried. I come from advertising, and so my initial thought was, let's run a bunch of ads, and then we realized that this is not like a broad appealing platform,
right?
horizontally applicable, right? There's a very specific ideal customer profile here, and you can't just run ads on Facebook to business owners and get high quality leads. I would throw out 9 if all I did was target business owners. And so advertising has not been as successful for us because we're not a horizontal product. We're very vertical specific, and there's only like 100 that run these dealerships in the United States. What we have found worked best was, firstly, my network was big enough to have a couple of these dealers in it. So that was where we got our first 2, to expand my network by going keynote presentations at expos and conferences where these dealers go, where all the vendors of these dealers go. And I had to actually meet all these people, and I met several really solid, well-connected resellers and value-added resellers, basically, and created relationships with them to distribute our products. And so I was basically leveraging their network. And if they're in my network, now their network's in my network. So we have found that this is like traditional account-based marketing and has been how we get our customers. It's a very low volume customer base. We don't have tens of thousands of customers, probably never will. But the customers we get, they're not like free trial $99 a month, right? It's multi-year, multi-six-figure contract to take over the entire sales operation. So it's like a 3 to 6 month sales process, and you get the entire company involved. Sales director is the first one, then the CIO jumps in, then they introduce you to marketing, then you talk to legal and IT, and then the CEO signs it off. And so like they are committing the entire organization to a total sales operation shift in a lot of different departments. So it's a long sale. And if you're looking at like OpenAI's revenue, that's only like 15% of OpenAI's revenue is stuff like that. So like integrating with enterprises. The rest of their revenue comes from these like consumer facing subscriptions. And we just don't have that part to our model yet. Our product isn't developed enough to have like a free trial version of Pitchit. But eventually we'll get there. I just think, OpenAI did enterprise sales for 6 years before they went public and started offering these consumer packaged plans. And there were people doing cold email and conference going long before any of us read the press releases about OpenAI and ChatGPT 3. ChatGPT 1 and 2 was selling for 5 years privately, just at a small scale. And so product-led growth is not something that I have found you should start with. I think you should roll out those features later. And in the early days, when you've got like an MVP, just like spearing a handful of really $1 million or $2 million in sales.
Got it. So, you're building an AI-enabled product. Where do you think AI is going? Like, are we going to need these products in like 5 years, like at all?
Well, there's basically 2 thoughts here. This is going to crash like Bitcoin, which actually has resurged. So that's not even that great of an example anymore. Let's just say it's going to crash like NFTs. Better example, because NFTs don't look like they're really coming back, at least not for art, right? Not for collectible art. So the first train of thought is that's going to crash, and it's going to end up being just junk these would give away for free if they could, their equity. Or it's going to take over the world, and we're all going to be dead, obsolete slaves. And I think that those are both so inaccurate. It is going to work exactly like it's working right now. Pitchit is integrating into an already automated workflow system to add one extra step of automation, right? I haven't seen salespeople get fired at any organization that's plugged Pitchit in. They were not able to keep up to begin with. So they already had too many leads. They couldn't call them all. They needed this in order to get to all of their leads and all of their SLAs. So it's simply going to make it so there's just a better customer experience. And that's going to improve results. They'll hit their quota more often. They'll get paid more. That will lead to them not being laid off. And they won't quit because they're getting paid better. And the business will scale because it's becoming a profit center instead of expense. And so this is probably what's going to happen is you'll see organizations make their sales operations a little more profitable. And look, let's be honest, March 2008, when Facebook was like a 50-cent lead and Google were like $6 calls. But dude, leads on Facebook now are like $7, $8. Leads on Google are like 50. It's crazy overpriced. Nobody can make ends meet with marketing anymore. And so with pixels going away, it was already a mess, and then pixels disappeared, and now it's like double that again. The cost per lead is out of this world. So people are shutting their marketing down, and now their sales are not as good because it's all on the SDRs to cold call and cold email and make up for the lack of advertising. So I think what AI is going to do is bring a little bit more balance and profitability into those departments and get them back to working again. Marketing hasn't been working for any organization for 3 or 4 years. And sales has had to pick up the slack and is not that great at picking up the slack. Cold email doesn't really replace Google advertising. It's not the same solution, and it's not really the same problem that it was designed to solve. So I think that you're going to see marketing teams come back into vogue with AI because they'll be more profitable, and you'll be able to actually justify having them on payroll as a department in a like job duty. And I think you're going to see SDRs and like account executives working more profitably as well. And so hopefully less churn and just keeping them on payroll for more than 3 months. So what is going to happen with AI the way that it is today, right? I can tell you that AI is just not able to take over end to end all of the things that sales people and marketing people have to do. And anytime I've seen a product attempt to make a totally black box end to end AI solution, it's been junk. It's been so bad. Like, hey, come here, tell us who you're targeting, and we'll create your website for you. We'll pick out your ICP. We'll position you. We'll send one-to-one personalized emails. We'll book the meeting for you. We'll take the meeting for you. We'll close the deal for you, and we'll onboard them so you don't have to do anything. That doesn't work. It's so hard to build a business. It's so hard to find product market fit. Humans can't even do it. Teams of humans can't even do it 9 times out of 10. AI is nowhere close to being able to do all that stuff. So it's definitely going to go the route of making departments that weren't profitable more profitable again.
Yeah, I like the way you put that, because like in my mind, right, like there, like in order for me to have like an outbound email operation or anything like that running, right, I'm like, well, we can't afford like, paying someone 100K or something like that to do outbound. It just doesn't work, and so
Yeah.
if I can take that over and bring the cost down to close to zero, then like we can have those people focus on things that need human intelligence, like emotional intelligence, because like that is something where AI can't compete, right?
yeah, building long-term contracted partnerships. Those are things AI is not going to be able to do ever, probably. And so I like cold email. We don't deal in that. Say about it. I don't think AI is going to fix that problem because the problem that cold email is solving is I don't have enough demand for my product. And that used to be solved by advertising. So you'd go to advertising and spend your money there and it would get you the demand. The problem is not solved as well by cold email because that medium doesn't have as much surface area to support 100 advertisers a day, which is something you can support on the internet. The internet has YouTube and Facebook and audience networks, and it has email threads, and it has streaming TV. Those are all radio. There's so many channels, right? That it's a more effective means to generate demand for the masses of businesses than one inbox that we're all trying to cram into, right? So I think that you're going to probably see email really become a channel that people don't use anymore. And any AI solution, all they've done is all that's been done for the last 15 years in cold email, which is, okay, sending 100 leads doesn't get you one lead anymore, then I'll send 1,000 leads or 1,000 emails to get you one lead. Oh, that's not working? I'll send 10,000 emails. Then I'll send 100,000. And then I'll send 1,000,000 emails to get you one lead. And so over the last 15 years, software has been designed to send more emails quicker to get you that one lead. And now the AI is in it. They're like, well, I'll differentiate because I'll send those 1,000,000 emails, but now there's no involvement because you and I are both sitting here saying, even if I could send 1,000,000 emails to get one lead, I wouldn't do it because of all the human operation and labor costs of setting that rig up and having to rebuild it every month when it gets marked down as spam. Just for one lead, that's not worth it. And so these AI solutions are like, oh, I have a fix for that problem. This AI will make it hands-free. And it's like, now what you've done is the quality of what you're saying to these people and who you're targeting is so bad. It's being run by an AI agent that knows nothing about your business that now you have to send 2,000,000 emails to get one lead. So who cares that it's hands-free? It works even less than it did before. And now you've got so many emails coming out that are trash with like 4 paragraphs in them. I get 9 a day now. It did not used to be like that. But 9 of them are hitting my inbox a day now. Email's just going to be dead. AI is probably going to kill cold email altogether. It's already been dying for a long time, man. You're just one of these days you're going to see Gmail and Outlook just say, "Hey guys, if you get any spam, it's done," and basically make it so it only works with internal messaging from now on. I think you're just going to see a massive change from the publishers and providers to stop all cold email permanently pretty soon. It's just so ineffective.
I think they tried that, and I think there's so many companies that build products around cold email that they got a pushback, and I think that's why it's still alive. But you're completely right.
Well, okay, so then the solution would be that Gmail and Outlook support some of their own internal products to shut down all the third-party vendors, and then they have more control over things like what can be sent and how you set it up and the volume that you set it up in. Those are all potential things, but at the end of the day, you're going to find very quickly that most niches that people sell into don't have 2,000,000 contacts. So if you need to send 2,000,000 emails to get one lead, it's not going to ever work for you because you only have, for me, there's only 100, maybe 200 businesses that are like big dealers of telecom products. So if I need to send 1,000,000 emails to get 1 or 2 meetings, cold email will never work for me. And most businesses will eventually get to that point where they'll say, unless I'm selling a product that could service 250 million Americans, like selling, there's no reason for me to ever even pursue cold email because the results are so low that I couldn't even get a single meeting, even if I had the list of everyone and message them all today.
Yeah, I agreed. I talked, I had a awakening about a couple of years ago. Like we were trying to implement these tools that would, send out like, emails from like 6 inboxes. I'm like, oh, we're, like we're doing something crazy, like we're really scaling
Yeah.
things. And then I talked to a company, I'm not going to name the company, but it's like we'll just say it's a WordPress competitor, a multi-billion-dollar company, and someone high up there told me what they're doing, and they built out the whole spamming infrastructure that sends out like million emails a day.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my god, like how are we going to compete with like 600
Yeah.
emails a day?
Yeah. Dialpad does that, by the way. And
Yeah.
I've talked to the sales managers there. They have had to like 10x their volume in the last 2 years. And
Yeah.
he told me that the results are so bad that even with 1 million a day, they get nothing. He said that we literally get goose egg, like no leads at all. It is
Right.
a total waste. They're running out of domain names to even send these from. And
Yeah.
so he's like, I think that what's ended up happening is the sales team now has to cold call everybody and build their own leads through networking. And I like that's just where this is going to end. Dialpad doesn't have enough customers on the planet. The total addressable market's not big enough for 0.1% reply rate to be a reliable channel to fill an entire sales team's calendar, right? They've got like 8 sales meeting slots a day and they have like 50 sales. That's like 400 meetings a day that you've got to book from cold email.
Mhm.
And if you're getting 0.1% booking rate, what's 400 divided by 0.1%, right? 400 divided by 0.01 is 400,000 emails a day have to be sent out. How many customers even exist that need telephone systems? Like
Yeah.
50,000? Where are they going to get the other 350? And that's just for day one, right? So this is the problem that's going to happen is that, yeah, they'll keep finding ways around it. And the solution has always been help people spin up campaigns faster and send more emails. And that has just led Google and Outlook to make more and more strict filters until now nobody them at all. So you see companies like Postal kicking ass. Direct mail is back in vogue and cold calling is back in vogue because that seems to be a more viable channel now. The numbers work better.
Yep. You're on point. Well, I don't want to take too much of your time. Can you, like give me a little bit of a background about what you did before this? How did you get to building your product? I know you kind of touched on it, but people to understand kind of like where you're coming from and where you get all this expertise from. So if you can tell me a bit about your founder journey, how you scaled your last agency, how you got to this point of raising funding for this current product, that would be great.
Okay, so I got into tech as a data scientist at a company called Frame Data. That was a Y Combinator grad in 2014 winter class, and we built that company and sold it to Square. Growth at Paperspace, also a Y Combinator grad, and that company sold to DigitalOcean. And then I got into consulting and spent something like $105 million in advertising for huge companies like Hilton and Uber and Postmates and Twist Bioscience and some really cool stuff. That's when I started finding this problem of multi-channel advertising and messaging and like issues with qualifying all the leads that come through these pipelines and issues that arose from pixels and cold email not working anymore, right? This is where I kind of uncovered it was through that consulting work. I saw it over and over and over again. Nobody could get advertising to be profitable. Nobody could get cold email to be profitable. And so that's where the idea of Pitchit arose. And then in building Pitchit, we kind of figured out where we fit as a solution and who would pay the most for it over time, right? It was just one discovery call, one client onboarding call, one problem and solution case study at a time, slowly helping us kind of like find our North Star. And so that whole journey started and is still, chapter one. Pitchit raises seed funding. This is literally chapter one. It's the beginning. But the like stuff that went into getting to where I am today was like a 7-year path to just getting the idea that was fundable.
I like it, man. I especially like kind of like I mean, I'm not sure you can call it a niche, but like how you're going after, for example, like resellers, T-Mobile, right? Like it's like
Super niche, dude. Super niche. It's like niche down. But it is that's how you got to get your beachhead in software, or they're going to compare you to like something super horizontal like OpenAI that sort of works for everyone that doesn't work great for anyone. You don't want to compete with them unless you've got $1 billion, because that's how much a horizontal play costs. It's extremely expensive to build an okay solution for everyone.
Yeah, no, 100%. So yeah, then my first advice is to like, especially if you're now building an AI, I think the biggest opportunity in AI is to like find like a niche that, like very small, like niche that you can serve really well, and then see if you can, if you can kind of like scale from there. But like I keep hearing pitches where it's like, like basically, like I want to build the next OpenAI. I'm like, nah. It's like you have to know the backstory of like the founders of OpenAI or these other companies to be able to pull that off. So
they still get funding though. Like I see it a lot. They'll come out of Y Combinator. They'll come out of TechStars. They'll get 2 million in funding from some random firm out of Boston. It does feel like you could raise funding with an idea like that, but I think that's, from my point of view, that's failing to understand the difference between finding an interested investor and then having product market fit. Investor market fit is the business. Like getting the funding is day zero. Now you got to figure out how to take that $3 million and turn it into revenue. And that's where they're going to have their problems, because that's when they're going to realize the market doesn't want more horizontal AI solutions that sort of work for no one, right? And they'll burn their money and they'll get demotivated and they'll have a lot of churn, and then they'll probably be looking for a soft landing somewhere.
yeah, man, you're on point.